Hi everyone, welcome to Emma, a true infidelity story. I'm excited to share a new story with you. As I adjust the focus on my microscope, the world shrinks down to a single cell. Its nucleus, a universe of potential. My name is Sophia, a 33-year-old medical technologist. My life, like the slides I analyze, has always been about precision, detail, and clarity. Each day I delve into the microscopic, finding beauty in the unseen, order in the chaos. But life isn't just about what's under the lens. There's Cody, my husband, a software engineer whose charm and dedication are as reliable as the code he writes together. We've built a life that's the epitome of suburban bliss. Our home, a sanctuary of warmth and laughter, is made complete by Buddy, our German shepherd. His wagging tail and playful antics are the daily reminders of joy, the kind that doesn't need to be analyzed or understood, just felt. Weekends are our escape. We hike through trails where the world feels untouched, where the air is crisp, and the only sound is the crunch of leaves underfoot. Movie nights are our retreat, where we lose ourselves in stories, our hands finding each other in the dark. And then there are the dinner parties where friends gather. Laughter fills the room, and for a moment, everything feels perfect. Yet beneath the serene surface, there's a storm brewing, a secret so shocking that it threatens to unravel everything we've built. It's not something you'd expect in a life so meticulously ordered. It started subtly, like the first signs of a disease under the microscope. A missed call here, an unexplained absence there. At first I dismissed it as the stress of work, the demands of a life where every detail matters. But as the anomalies grew, so did my unease. One evening, as I prepared dinner, the silence of our home felt oppressive. Cody was late again, his phone going straight to voicemail. Buddy, sensing my tension, sat by my side, his head resting on my knee, his eyes full of concern. That's when I noticed something odd, a small, almost imperceptible change in our home. A book was out of place, a book I hadn't touched in months. It was a medical textbook, one I used during my studies, now lying open on the coffee table. Its pages, marked with notes that weren't mine. Curiosity mixed with a growing dread led me to flip through the pages. The notes were cryptic, filled with references to conditions I knew well, but the handwriting was unfamiliar. It was as if someone else had been studying our life, our secrets, through the lens of my own profession. The sound of the front door opening jolted me back to reality. Cody's voice, usually a comfort, now carried an edge of something I couldn't quite place. "Hey, sorry I'm late," he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. I wanted to confront him, to demand answers, but something held me back, the fear of what I might discover. Perhaps instead, I watched him, noting the slight tremor in his hands as he poured himself a drink, the way his gaze seemed to avoid mine. That night, as we lay in bed, the silence between us was a chasm. I listened to his breathing, steady and calm, while my mind raced through scenarios, each more unsettling than the last. What could possibly disrupt such a perfect life? The question haunted me, its answer lurking just out of sight, like a shadow in the periphery of my vision. The next morning, the routine of our life continued, but it was as if I was seeing everything through a different lens. The precision I once found comforting now felt like a facade, a veneer hiding something darker, something I was afraid to uncover. As I prepared for work, my hands moved mechanically, but my mind was elsewhere. The image of the book, the notes, Cody's late arrivals. They all swirled together, forming a pattern I couldn't yet decipher. The drive to the lab was a blur, my thoughts consumed by the mystery unfolding in my own home. At work, I tried to lose myself in my tasks, but the precision I prided myself on was now a tool to dissect my own life. Every cell, every slide seemed to whisper secrets, urging me to look closer to see what was hidden. The day passed in a haze of routine and revelation. Each test, each result felt like a metaphor for my life. I was looking for anomalies, for signs of disease. But what if the disease was within my own home? What if the pathogen was someone I loved? As the sun set, casting long shadows across the lab, I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. The storm was coming and I needed to face it. Head on. Tonight, I would confront Cody, not with accusations, but with questions, with a need for truth. The drive home was tense, the anticipation of what was to come making each mile feel like a journey into the unknown. I parked the car, took a deep breath, and stepped into our home, ready to uncover the truth, no matter how shocking it might be. It was a typical Thursday evening, when the first signs of my life's impending derailment appeared. Cody was working late again, a common occurrence that left me with Buddy for company. Feeling restless, I decided to take Buddy for a late-night walk to the train station, a place where I often found solace in the quiet hum of the tracks. The station, deserted after hours, had a haunting beauty, the silence punctuated only by the occasional distant train whistle. As we walked, I couldn't shake off the feeling of loneliness, the weight of my unfulfilled desires pressing down on me. Buddy, sensing my mood, stayed close, his warmth of small comfort in the cold night. The rhythmic clatter of the trains seemed to echo the turmoil in my mind. I found myself drawn to the edge of the platform, peering down into the darkness where the tracks disappeared. It was here in this liminal space that my thoughts began to unravel. The notes in the medical textbook, Cody's evasive behavior, the subtle shifts in our home's atmosphere, they all swirled together, forming a storm of suspicion and fear. Buddy sat beside me, his tail thumping softly against the concrete, his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that seemed to ask, "What's wrong, Sophia?" I reached down to stroke his fur, finding solace in his unwavering loyalty. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of metal and electricity from the trains. I closed my eyes, letting the sounds of the station wash over me. The distant hum, the occasional screech of bras. They were all part of a symphony that usually calmed me, but tonight they only amplified my unease. I thought back to the book on the coffee table, its pages marked with notes that weren't mine. The handwriting was precise, almost clinical, but it wasn't Cody's. Who else would delve into medical texts in our home? The implications were chilling. My mind raced with possibilities. Was Cody involved in something dangerous? Was he researching a condition for someone else? Or was it something more personal? Something he couldn't share with me? The thought that he might be hiding a medical condition for me? A medical professional stung deeply. Buddy nudged my hand, pulling me back from the edge of my spiraling thoughts. I looked at him, his eyes reflecting the dim lights of the station. "You know, don't you?" I whispered, more to myself than to him. "You sense it. The change in the air. The secrets that are creeping into our lives." The cold was seeping through my jacket, but I barely noticed. My focus was inward, dissecting every interaction. Every glance Cody had given me recently. Had there been signs I missed? The way he avoided my gaze, the slight tremor in his hands, the way he seemed to be, always on the verge of saying something, but never did. I stood up, feeling the need to move, to walk off the tension. Buddy trotted beside me, his leash loose in my hand. We walked along the platform, the echo of our steps, a stark contrast to the silence of the night. Each step felt like a march towards an inevitable confrontation, a moment where the truth would either set us free or shatter our world. The station clock chimed, marking the passage of time, reminding me that life was moving forward, with or without my understanding. I paused, looking up at the clock, its hands relentless in their march. "What are we going to find out, Buddy?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What's hidden behind the facade of our perfect life?" The train station with its ghostly presence seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the answers as much as I was. I knew that when I returned home, I would have to confront Cody, not with accusations, but with a need for clarity, for truth. The precision I applied to my work would now be turned inward, dissecting the life we had built together, searching for the anomaly, the disease that threatened to consume us. As we turned back towards home, the weight of the night's revelations pressed down on me, but there was also a resolve, a determination to face whatever lay ahead. Buddy's presence was a reminder of the love and loyalty that still existed in our home, a beacon in the storm that was brewing. The walk back was slower, each step heavy with anticipation. The night was no longer just cold, it was charged with the electricity of impending change, and as we approached our house, I knew that the next few hours would define not just our future, but the very essence of who we were as a couple. The night deepened, and the station's silence seemed to amplify my inner turmoil. Buddy, ever the faithful companion, sat beside me as I leaned against a cold metal bench. In a moment of vulnerability, I shared my deepest fears and desires with him, as if he could understand the conversation. One-sided, as it was led to an unexpected turn of events. I found myself speaking aloud, my voice barely above a whisper. Buddy, what if Cody is hiding something from me? What if our perfect life is just a facade? My words hung in the air, mingling with the cold breath of the night. Buddy's ears perked up, his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that seemed to say, I'm here for you. In a moment of confusion, driven by loneliness and a desperate need for connection, I found myself crossing a line I never imagined I would. The act was brief, shocking, and filled with a mix of horror and an inexplicable sense of release. I reached into my pocket, pulling out a small, familiar object. It was Cody's phone, which he had left at home earlier. The temptation was overwhelming, the need to know, to find some semblance of truth in this sea of uncertainty. With trembling hands, I unlocked it, the screen illuminating the darkness around me. I scrolled through his messages, my heart pounding in my C********T. There were no explicit signs of infidelity or deceit, but there were messages from a number I didn't recognize, cryptic and coded, discussing times and places. Nothing that made immediate sense. Each word felt like a shard of glass cutting through the trust one had built with Cody over the years. Buddy, sensing my distress, moved closer, his warmth a stark contrast to the chill of betrayal. I whispered to him, What am I doing? Buddy, this isn't me. But the act was done. I had invaded Cody's privacy, a boundary I had never thought I would cross. The horror of my actions hit me like a wave. I had always prided myself on integrity, on the sanctity of personal space. Yet here I was violating the very principles I held dear. The release, however, was the knowledge, the fleeting sense of control in a situation where I felt utterly powerless. I quickly locked the phone, my hands shaking as I placed it back into my pocket. The act, though brief, left a mark on my soul, a stain I knew I would have to confront. Buddy's tail thumped softly against the bench, a small comfort in the vast emptiness of the station. The silence of the night was no longer just the absence of sound. It was the void where my trust used to reside. I stood up, feeling the weight of my actions, the weight of the secrets I now carried. Buddy followed his leash, dragging behind him, as we began our walk back home. As we walked, I replayed the messages in my mind, trying to piece together their meaning. Each step felt heavier than the last. The path back to our house, now a journey towards an inevitable confrontation. The night air was thick, with a scent of impending change, the kind that could either mend or break. The station lights flickered, casting long shadows that danced with my doubts. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just opened Pandora's box. What would I find when I returned home? Would Cody notice the breach of his privacy? Would he confront me with his own suspicions? The walk back was a blur, my mind racing with scenarios, each more unsettling than the last. Buddy's presence was a grounding force, a reminder of the love and loyalty that still existed in our home, despite the storm brewing within it. As we approached our house, the lights were on, casting a warm glow that contrasted sharply with the cold dread in my heart. I paused at the doorstep, taking a deep breath, the phone in my pocket feeling like a lead weight. Buddy looked up at me, his eyes full of trust and innocence. I'm sorry, Buddy. I whispered, more to myself than to him. I hope you can forgive me for what I've done. Stepping inside, the familiar warmth of our home enveloped me, but it felt different. Now tainted by my actions. Cody was in the kitchen, his back to me as he poured himself a drink. His movements were casual, unaware of the turmoil I was bringing into our sanctuary. Hey, you're back, he said, turning with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. How is the walk? I forced a smile, the phone in my pocket, burning against my skin. It was enlightening, I replied, the weight of my words hanging between us. The night was far from over, and the confrontation I had anticipated was now upon us. But it wasn't just about the secrets Cody might be keeping. It was also about the breach of trust one had committed. The storm was here, and it was time to face it. Not just for the truth about Cody, but for the truth about myself. The days following were a blur of guilt and confusion. I avoided Cody's touch, fearing he might sense the betrayal. Buddy, too, seemed to look at me differently, his eyes filled with a knowing sadness. My work suffered. My once meticulous attention to detail, now scattered by the storm within, I began to question everything about my life, my marriage, my desires. Was this a one-time lapse? Or was it a sign of deeper issues? The weight of my secret grew heavier, pushing me towards a decision point. The nights were the hardest lying beside Cody. I felt like an imposter in my own life. His breathing, steady and calm, was a stark contrast to the turmoil in my mind. Each night I replayed the moment at the train station, the messages on his phone, the cold dread that had settled in my heart. I started to notice more things out of place. A shirt I hadn't seen before in his wardrobe, a receipt for a meal at a restaurant we'd never visited. Each discovery was like another piece of evidence in a case I didn't want to solve at work. I tried to lose myself in the routine, but every slide, every cell, seemed to whisper my secrets back at me. The precision I prided myself on was now a tool to dissect my own life. I was looking for anomalies, for signs of disease. But what if the disease was within my own home? What if the pathogen was someone I loved? The guilt was consuming. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had violated not just Cody's privacy, but also the trust that was the foundation of our relationship. The thought of confessing was terrifying, yet the idea of keeping this secret felt like a betrayal of my own values. One evening, as I prepared dinner, the silence of our home felt oppressive. Cody was late again, his phone going straight to voicemail. Buddy. Sensing my tension, sat by my side, his head resting on my knee, his eyes full of concern. I looked at him, his loyalty unwavering, and whispered, "What do I do? Buddy, how do I fix this?" The front door opened, and Cody walked in, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Hey, sorry I'm late," he said, his voice carrying an edge of something I couldn't place. I watched him, noting the slight tremor in his hands as he poured himself a drink, the way his gaze seemed to avoid mine. The air was thick with unspoken words, and I knew I had to break the silence. "Cody, we need to talk," I said, my voice steadied despite the storm inside me. He paused, his drink halfway to his lips, and looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "About what?" he asked, his tone cautious. I took a deep breath, the words I had rehearsed in my mind now fighting to come out. I've been feeling like there's something you're not telling me, and I've done something I'm not proud of," I confessed, my heart pounding in my C********T. Cody set his drink down, his expression shifting from confusion to concern. "What did you do, Sophia?" I reached into my pocket, pulling out his phone, the screen still showing the messages I had read. "I looked through your phone," I admitted, the words tasting bitter. "I found messages from someone, times and places, things that didn't make sense to me." His face paled, and for a moment he was silent. "Processing my confession, you went through my phone." His voice was a mix of hurt and disbelief. "I know it was wrong, Cody. I was desperate, confused. I thought maybe you were hiding something from me." Cody sat down, his hands clasping the glass tightly. "Sophia, those messages, they're not what you think. I've been working on a project. Something I wanted to surprise you with. It's not about another person. It's about us." The relief was immediate, but short-lived. "A project?" I echoed, my mind racing to catch up. "Yes," he said, his voice softening. "I've been planning a trip for us. A second honeymoon. The messages are from a travel agent setting up details, making sure everything is perfect." The weight of my mistake crashed down on me here. I was suspecting the worst while he was planning something beautiful for us. "Cody, I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I let my fears get the best of me." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "I understand why you did it, Sophia. But we need to talk about trust, about what's happening with us." The conversation that followed was raw, painful, but necessary. We talked about our fears, our insecurities, the pressures of life that had slowly built walls between us. Cody shared his own struggles, his fears of not being enough, of losing what we had. As we spoke, I realized that my invasion of his privacy was not just a breach of trust, but a symptom of a larger issue. We had both been so caught up in maintaining the facade of our perfect life that we forgot to nurture the reality of our relationship. "We need to work on this, Sophia," Cody said, his eyes earnest. "We need to find our way back to each other, not just through trips or surprises, but through honesty, through being present." I nodded, tears welling up. "I want that, Cody. I want us to be real again, not just the image we've created. Buddy, who had been quietly observing, came over, his tail wagging softly. He seemed to sense the shift in the atmosphere, the lifting of the heavy cloud that had been hanging over our home that night as we lay in bed. The silence was different. It was not the chasm of secrets, but the quiet of understanding, of a commitment to rebuild. I listened to Cody's breathing, now a comfort, a reminder that we were in this together. The days that followed were not easy. We had to confront the reality of our vulnerabilities, the cracks in our foundation. But with each conversation, each shared moment of honesty, we were piecing back together what had been fractured at work. I found a new focus, not just in the precision of my tasks, but in the understanding that life, like the cells I studied, was complex, full of unexpected anomalies. But these anomalies were not just problems to solve. They were opportunities for growth, for deeper connections. The storm had passed, but its lessons lingered. I had learned that trust was not just given, it was earned, maintained, and sometimes painfully rebuilt. Cody and I were on a new path, one where we would face our fears together, not hide them in the shadows. As I looked at Buddy, his eyes, reflecting the dim light of our bedroom, I whispered, "Thank you, Buddy, for being our constant, our reminder of what's real." He thumped his tail, and in that simple gesture, I found a promise of the love and loyalty that would guide us through the days ahead. One evening, as Cody and I sat in our living room, the tension was palpable. Buddy lay at our feet, his presence a silent witness to the unraveling of our perfect life. Unable to bear the weight any longer, I broke down, confessing everything to Cody. The room filled with a heavy silence, broken only by my sobs and Buddy's soft whimpers. Cody's reaction was not what I expected. Instead of anger or disgust, there was a profound sadness, a realization that our life together had been built on a foundation now cracked by my actions. I didn't know how else to handle it. I whispered, my voice trembling. I felt like I was losing you, losing us, and I couldn't just sit back and watch it happen. Cody looked at me, his eyes reflecting a storm of emotions. "Sophia, understand why you did what you did. But it's not just about the phone, is it? It's about us, about what we've become." His words cut through the fog of my guilt. "I know," I admitted. "I've been so focused on the details, on the anomalies, that I've lost sight of what's really important." He reached out, taking my hand in his, a gesture that felt both foreign and familiar. "I've been planning this trip, this second honeymoon, because I wanted to remind us of what we have. But maybe we need to start here at home with honesty." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "Cody, I've been so scared of losing you, scared of not being enough, and in my fear I've made mistakes." He squeezed my hand gently. "We've both made mistakes, Sophia. I've been so wrapped up in work, in making everything perfect, that I've neglected us. I didn't see the signs, the distance growing between us." The honesty in his voice was like a balm to my soul. "What do we do now?" asked my voice. "Small. We rebuild," Cody said firmly. "We start with trust. I need to trust you again, and you need to trust me. We need to be open to talk about our fears, our desires, everything." I looked down at Buddy, his eyes full of concern. "And Buddy," I said, a small smile breaking through my tears, "he's been our constant, our reminder of what's real." Cody chuckled softly, the sound easing some of the tension. "Yes, Buddy has been our anchor. Maybe we should start by being as loyal and open as he is." The night stretched on and we talked. We talked about everything from the mundane to the profound. Cody shared his fears of not being able to keep up with the expectations of our life, of feeling like he was failing me. I confessed my own insecurities, my fear of losing the precision and control that defined my professional life, and how it had spilled over into our personal life. As the conversation deepened, I realized that our perfect life was not about the absence of flaws, but about how we dealt with them. "We've been trying to maintain an image, haven't we?" I said, the realization dawning on me. "Yes," Cody agreed. "But maybe it's time we let go of that image and focus on what's real, on what we truly need from each other." The room felt lighter, not because the problems had vanished, but because we were facing them together. "I want to work on this, Cody. I want us to be real again, not just the image we've created." He nodded, his eyes earnest. "I want that too. Let's start by being present, by listening, by understanding, We agreed to take steps towards rebuilding our trust. No more secrets, no more hidden agendas. We would share our schedules, our thoughts, even our mundane daily activities. It was about transparency, about letting each other in. Buddy, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, came over his tail. Wagging softly, he seemed to understand that something significant had changed. "Thank you, Buddy," I whispered, stroking his fur, for being our reminder of what's important. The next few days were different. There was a new openness in our interactions. Cody would share details about his day, his meetings, even the mundane tasks. I found myself opening up about my work, about the cells and slides that had once consumed my thoughts. Now sharing the space with thoughts of us at work. I found a new focus, not just in the precision of my tasks, but in the understanding that life, like the cells I studied, was complex, full of unexpected anomalies. But these anomalies were not just problems to solve. They were opportunities for growth, for deeper connections. One evening, as we prepared dinner together, the silence was not oppressive but comforting. Cody chopped vegetables while I stirred the sauce, our movements synchronized in a dance we had forgotten. "This feels good," I said, breaking the silence. "It does," Cody replied, looking up with a smile that reached his eyes. "This time it's like we're rediscovering each other." The meal was simple, but it felt like a feast of reconciliation. We talked about the trip he had planned, now not just a surprise, but a symbol of our commitment to each other. "I want it to be a new beginning for us," Cody said, his voice filled with hope. "I want that too," I agreed, feeling the warmth of his hand on mine across the table. "But let's make sure we start that new beginning here at home with each other." As the night deepened, we sat in the living room, Buddy curled up at our feet, his soft snoring a testament to the peace that had settled over our home. We watched a movie, not just for the escape, but to share in the laughter and the quiet moments, our hands finding each other in the dark. The storm had passed, but its lessons lingered. I had learned that trust was not just given, it was earned, maintained, and sometimes painfully rebuilt. Cody and I were on a new path, one where we would face our fears together, not hide them in the shadows. As I looked at Buddy, his eyes reflecting the dim light of our bedroom, I whispered, "Thank you, Buddy, for being our constant, our reminder of what's real." He thumped his tail, and in that simple gesture, I found a promise of the love and loyalty that would guide us through the days ahead. As the days turned into weeks, Cody and I embarked on a journey of healing that was as painful as it was necessary. The decision to seek counseling was not made lightly, but we both knew our marriage was worth the fight. The sessions were grueling, each one peeling back layers of our relationship, exposing the raw nerves beneath. In the counselor's office, the air was thick with the weight of our confessions. I sat across from Cody, our hands occasionally brushing against each other, a reminder of the connection we were trying to salvage. The room was quiet, save for the soft ticking of a clock each second, a reminder of the time we had lost to misunderstandings and secrets. "Tell me, Sophia," the counselor, Dr. Isabella, began, her voice gentle yet firm. "What was going through your mind when you decided to look through Cody's phone?" I took a deep breath, feeling the familiar sting of guilt. I was scared. I admit, my voice barely above a whisper. I felt like our life was slipping away, like I was losing Cody to something I couldn't see or understand, the notes in the textbook, the late nights. It all felt like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't solve. Cody shifted in his seat, his gaze on the floor. "And Cody, how did you feel when you found out Sophia had gone through your phone?" He looked up, his eyes meeting mine, filled with a mix of hurt and understanding. "Betrayed initially, but then I realized it was my fault too. I was so focused on this surprise, on making everything perfect, that I didn't see how my actions were affecting Sophia. I didn't communicate, didn't share. I left her in the dark." Dr. Isabella nodded, her expression. "Thoughtful communication is the cornerstone of trust. What steps are you both willing to take to rebuild that trust?" We talked about transparency, about sharing our daily lives more openly. Cody spoke of his desire to be more present, not just physically but emotionally. I shared my commitment to confronting my fears directly, to not let suspicion fester in silence. The sessions were filled with tears, not just from the pain of our confessions, but from the relief of finally speaking truths that had been buried deep. There were arguments, moments where old wounds were reopened, but Dr. Isabella guided us through, teaching us to listen, truly listen to each other. Buddy, our silent observer, often came with us to these sessions. His presence was a balm, a reminder of the unconditional love we were striving to emulate. One evening, after a particularly intense session, we returned home. The silence between us not heavy but reflective. "I never realized how much I was hurting you," Cody said, as we sat on our couch, Buddy's head resting on his lap. "And I never realized how much I was pushing you away with my suspicions," I replied, my hand finding his. The train station, once a place of solace, now held a different memory for me. It was where my world had begun to unravel, where I had crossed a line. But it was also where I had begun to understand the depth of my love for Cody, the depth of our commitment to each other. We started to visit the station together, not just for walks but to sit, to talk, to watch the world go by. It became a symbol of our journey towards redemption. Each visit we shared more, not just the mundane details of our day, but our hopes, our fears, our dreams for the future. One chilly evening, as we sat on the platform, the distant hum of a train approaching, Cody turned to me. "Do you think we can really make it through this, Sophia?" I looked at him, the man I had promised to love, in sickness and in health, in joy and in sorrow. "I believe we can," I said, conviction in my voice, "because we're choosing to fight for us every day." The train passed, its whistle echoing our resolve. Buddy, ever the faithful companion, thumped his tail, his eyes reflecting the dim lights of the station, a silent witness to our commitment. As we walked back home, hand in hand, the night felt different. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of change, of new beginnings. Our home, once a battleground of secrets, was slowly becoming a sanctuary again, not of perfection, but of real raw love. The process was far from over. There were still moments of doubt, of old habits trying to creep back in. But each time we turned each other to the lessons learned in counseling, to the love we had for each other, and to Buddy, whose unwavering loyalty reminded us of what we could strive for in the quiet of our bedroom. As Cody and I lay side by side, the silence was no longer a chasm, but a space filled with understanding, with the promise of a future built on honesty and trust. Buddy, curled up at the foot of the bed, his soft snoring, a testament to the peace that was slowly returning to our home. The question lingered in the air, not just for us, but for anyone who might hear our story. Will Sophia and Cody find her way back to each other? Or will this be the end of their journey together? Only time would tell. But for now, we were walking that path together, step by step towards healing, towards each other. If you feel that this story is meaningful and brings useful lessons, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me. Thanks.